Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is another episode of Your Questions Answered, and in last week's episode I answered another question from one of our readers, and the question last week was part 6 of my partner is in intensive care on a ventilator. The intensive care team wants to do a tracheostomy and I want to have him extubated. What do I do? You can check out the answer to last week's question by clicking on the link below this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, you should click on the link to our website and you can read or watch the other episodes there. In this week's episode of Your Questions Answered, I want to answer the next question from Heather as part of her one-on-one consulting sessions with me. Previous questions, part 1 to part 6 from Heather, you can find answered by clicking on the relevant links below this video on our website. So today, Heather asks, my partner is in intensive care on a ventilator. The intensive care team wants to do a tracheostomy and I want to have him extubated. What do I do? Part 7. So, Heather writes, Hi Patrick, my partner had to have a round of dialysis for his kidney failure. One day they filtered blood and pulled fluids, and the second day they didn't pull fluids, just filtered blood, and he was moved to the IMCU 2 days later. He has been moved to long-term acute care center. He has been weaned off the ventilator. His trachea has been capped with a speaking valve for 2 days now. He can take small sips of water. He has been doing physical therapy, but he has no muscle mass in the lower part of his body. They say it'll take time to build his muscles back up. The day after our last consulting session, the ICU doctor came, spoke to me. He explained what all was going on and made me feel a lot better about everything. I thanked him and told him I had been feeling like everyone had made a big secret out of my partner's condition, and I felt like I was an intruder. 2 days later I came in to visit my partner again, and they wanted to do the dialysis again, and I was giving up hope for the recovery of my partner. I was very happy that his brother was there and more positive than me at that point in time. The doctor came in and explained to us about the dialysis. He also hugged me and apologized to me. He said I said something to him that hit him very hard. He said he has been seeing me every day there in the ICU, and when I did thank him for talking and explaining things to me, it made him realize that they had failed me in this situation. He said yes, they have many other patients and all, but he said they have time for all of that, and a big portion of their time and their job is to take time for the patients' families, and he was truly sorry and urged everyone to work on that in the future, and he gave me a big hug, and everything has gotten better since then, even though we haven't seen him again since. Many thanks for all your help, Heather. So here's my response. Hi Heather, I'm glad to hear that things have improved since we last spoke. It's great to hear that your partner is off the ventilator and that the tracheostomy is capped now. And yes, it'll take time for your partner's muscle mass to come back, and it sounds that he'll get there. Keep pushing for that regular physiotherapy. As it relates to your partner's kidney dialysis for his kidney failure, please be aware that you shouldn't panic because of him needing the dialysis for now. Many critically ill patients in intensive care go through a period of kidney failure in intensive care for a number of reasons, and they often need temporary dialysis. And as you have correctly pointed out, Some days they remove fluids and other days the machine just filters the blood. It all depends on whether your partner has too many fluids on board or not enough. But as a rule of thumb, in most cases no dialysis is needed after the intensive care stay, because if it was, we would have an epidemic of people on dialysis machines for kidney failure. In any case, I'm really glad you're spelling out what a lot of families in intensive care think and feel all the time. Families in intensive care tend to be so far outside of their comfort zone that open, transparent and timely communication is vital and is needed from the very start. That's very often missing, and that's why families in intensive care feel so helpless, frightened, vulnerable and stressed. Especially during the many ups and downs and highs and lows patients can go through while they are in intensive care. Open, transparent and timely communication is so important and is yet often missing. I can see how you must have felt when after the doctor spoke to you, you only found that your partner has been put back on the dialysis machine. It's also a big issue that you felt like you have been an intruder. No family member in intensive care should ever feel like an intruder. What does that say about the communication style of an intensive care team? Family members or partners feel like an intruder when their loved one is critically ill in intensive care? Think about that. Shame on any intensive care team who makes a family member or a partner feel like an intruder. I'm very glad to hear though that you've stood your ground all the way through and that things are now slowly but surely getting better. So, give yourself a pat on the back, Heather, for dealing with this massive, once-in-a-lifetime challenge successfully by not giving up and by staying strong. It's also vital to stay positive whilst your loved one is going through their critical illness, and this is often easier said than done. You should check out an article or a video that I read about this, how to stay positive if your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. You can find this article on our website by using the search function, or you can Google intensivecarehotline.com how to stay positive if your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Now, not everybody can see the light at the end of the tunnel that we as health professionals in intensive care often see first. Because I have seen many situations over and over again, and I can sometimes, and certainly not always, predict where things are going. And the fact of the matter is that health professionals in intensive care are like fish in water, and families in intensive care are like fish out of water. I'm very glad though that at least one of the doctors acknowledged you and your concerns, and I'm surprised that he admitted that they had failed you. That's a courageous statement to make, and it requires some courage as well as some awareness. Again, the lack of acknowledgement of families in intensive care comes back to health professionals in intensive care being like fish in water, and families in intensive care being like fish out of water. The situation when having a loved one critically ill in intensive care only gets easier and better when the intensive care team takes the time to explain things in detail. They also must acknowledge the family's deep-seated and also unconscious fears, concerns and frustrations that inevitably come with having a loved one critically ill in intensive care. So, thank you so much, Heather, again for being a client and signing up for our one-on-one consulting, and I'll see you soon. Thanks again. So, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one, and how can you get peace of mind, control, power and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You get to that all-important feeling of peace of mind, control, power and influence when you download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn quickly how to get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free instant impact report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care, and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You'll get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You'll get crucial behind the scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care, and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's Your Questions Answered, and I'll see you again in another episode next week. Make sure you also check out our blog section where you get more tips and strategies, or send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. Or you can call us, find phone numbers on our contacts tab. Also check out our product section where you get more ebooks, videos and audio recordings, and where you can also get one-on-one consulting with me via Skype, over the phone or via email by clicking on the products tab. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.